One last thing I want to talk about with type narrowing is called exhaustiveness checking or never checking or just using the never type to make sure that we have exhausted all possible options. So if we come back to this get farm animal sound where we have this union type farm animal, pig, rooster, and cow, or cow, pig, rooster, or cow. It's set up correctly at the moment, right? We've got a case handling pig, a case handling cow, and a case handling rooster. But what we can do is add in a default case here. And in this default case, we're basically going to say we should never, ever make it here. We should never make it here if we handled all cases correctly. So this is like a way to future-proof our code and make it very clear and have TypeScript yell at us if we were to add in, let's say, a new type of farm animal and then forget to handle it. So that seems low stakes with farm animals, but let's say it was something to do with a login and authentication or something around payments where we want to make sure we handle every single possible case of an error or every possible case of a status code or whatever it is. And then if somehow something changed and we didn't handle it, we would want our code to let us know. So one common pattern for this, you could use an assertion, but you could just make a variable. We'll call this like const should never get here. We'll change this name in a moment. And we're going to say it's of type never. And then we'll set it equal to whatever our animal is. So remember the never type, we talked about it very, very early on. It may not have made a lot of sense then. But basically the never type is assignable to every type, but no other type is assignable to never. So if animal if we make it here, right? If we ever get here, we're going to get an error because we cannot have an animal, whatever animal is, assigned to type never. So let's just take a look at this. If I mess things up, if I make a new animal here, interface sheep, has a name, that's a string, a weight, that's a number, an age, that's a number, and then I add in kind is sheep. And then I add that into my farm animal union type, right? So now you can also be a sheep. Well, you might be a sheep, but farm animal, anything of that type can be a sheep. Well, we're no longer handling every single case. We're not exhaustively handling all cases for farm animal. And I'm going to get an error here because now the default is actually running, right? This was not true. This was not true. This was not true. So we made it here. And now TypeScript's going to complain and say, what happened? And then it says type sheep is not assignable to type never. So that is telling us we messed up, right? We are not handling a case. This should never be true. That the whole point of this default is just our exhaustiveness check saying we don't ever want to be in a situation where this code runs and we make it here. But right now we would be because we're not handling sheep. Or we could be, right, if we passed in a sheep at least. So now we can add in a case for sheep, which is our kind. And then we'll return bah. I think that was a great impression. And this is no longer yelling at me. But as soon as I added in a new animal and I wasn't handling it in here, I would get a warning or an error actually saying, what are you doing? We suddenly are trying to assign type, chicken or type emu to never, which you cannot do. And then to be extra certain, we can just return should never get here because we're not returning anything here in this case. You could call it should never get here, and maybe I'll leave that because it's a little clearer if you're reading this later. But what you'll see on the docs and some other code bases is exhaustive check. It's just another name for the same concept, right? This variable is of type never, and we'll know if we need to implement another case in here if we get an error because of this exhaustive check. Okay,